How's it going, everyone? It's Sam. I just made a big move with my corporate treasury, with my reserves, my emergency fund, whatever you want to call it, for a business that I own. I'm putting half of it into Bitcoin. I can show you. I'm going to explain why that is. If you don't mind, hit subscribe. Turn on the bell notification underneath the video so you can see future videos just like this. And as you know, I am heavily invested in Bitcoin already, but I think this was the right move for the long term of this business. It's going to make it able to weather the storm of inflation much better. If you are bullish on Bitcoin, there's a link to Margex underneath the video where you can trade cryptocurrency using leverage. And of course, you need to make sure that you understand what leverage is. Yesterday, I talked about leverage and I talked about some different exchanges in a video. I go through why I really like Margex. There's a link to Margex underneath the video where you get a deposit bonus that can be used towards fees for the first couple of weeks. There's also a link down there to CoinW as well in case you want to start trading there. You can buy spot Bitcoin. You can also leverage trade. So check those links out underneath the video. Now, the Bitcoin halving is at 99% progress. We're only 2 weeks away. Pretty exciting times in the market. And it has me rethinking my strategy. It has me that along with this post from the Kansas City Cattle Company. The Kansas City Cattle Company just 4 days ago announced that it adopted a Bitcoin reserve policy going forward. Basically, adopted Bitcoin as the primary reserve treasury asset, which tells me over 50% of their reserves or of their emergency fund, of the capital that they have set aside for the business for some downturn in the economy, for some issue, let's say health scare, for some kind of issue with their building or a machine. 50% of that, a little bit more than 50% at least, is in Bitcoin now. They say the debilitating loss in purchasing power combined with the increases in costs in our industry have made this one of the easiest decisions they've ever made. Fix the money, fix the food. This got 500,000 views. What I'm doing is something somewhat similar. I'm going to be putting half of the emergency fund or half of the reserves of one of my rental properties into Bitcoin. Now, why would I do that? Okay, let me show you the spreadsheet. This is kind of freaky when you break it down. Okay, so I plan on holding this asset, and I'll show you too. I have this in Fidelity. So I just opened an account. I'm transferring $4,000 in there. You might be saying $4,000, that's not that much. Well, honestly, the rental property doesn't need all that much in reserves. I have about $8,000 set aside. I bought the rental property a year ago. It's doing well so far. It's made a good cash on cash return. But the problem is I put right around $8,000 in there. A couple months of expenses. If something goes wrong, I can fix it. And I do have cash outside of this too. But honestly, I didn't want to put more cash in this account because it's just sitting there. At this point, I don't even get interest on it at my bank. So I had $8,000 in cash just sitting there in an account. So over time, over the next 50 years, which I plan on holding this property for 50 years, it's going to depreciate. This $8,000 is going to become worth less and less from inflation, right? It's going to be inflated away. So $8,000 today is actually worth $5,900 in inflation adjusted purchasing power 10 years from now. This is only with a 3% interest rate or 3% inflation rate. 50 years from now, it's going to be worth $1,800. Now, is this the biggest deal in the world? No, but are there better ways of using this cash? Probably. In the 1 year that I've held this property, I haven't had one thing come up that I had to dip into this cash for. It's just sitting there, right? It's just sitting there doing nothing. And I think a lot of us have that. Maybe if you don't even have a business, you probably have that with your emergency fund. I've actually seen some interesting studies that said it would actually be better to use a credit card and use that for emergency funds than to keep cash in your bank account. Because one every 2 or 3 years, maybe you have something that comes up, it takes a couple weeks to pay back. So you sit $20,000, $30,000 in cash, just sitting there for really no reason except for maybe there's something that comes up where if you use a credit card, you get 30, maybe 60 days to pay it back without interest. And then even if you pass that, then you get a couple percent a month compared to the opportunity cost of even the S&P 500, 10% a year. It's an interesting thought experiment. But Bitcoin is much better. Let's say you want to do the same thing. You want to keep some cash, but you want to keep some Bitcoin too. This is essentially what I'm going to be doing, right? And I'll talk about why I'm buying a Bitcoin ETF instead of actual Bitcoin here in a second. But 50% cash stays exactly the same. Let's say you're not even getting a 5% interest rate or something, which you can. Most of my cash is getting 5% interest rates, but not this account that I have for the rental property. But let's say you put 50% of Bitcoin, and we're going to say for the first 10 years, it goes up, it appreciates 20% a year. Some people might be saying, that's crazy, it's not going to do that. I think it will. I mean, that would be saying that Bitcoin's not going to 6x over the next 10 years. It's not going to go up to $400,000 by 2034. I think it is. A lot of other people think so. And traditionally, it's appreciated about 50%. So I realize that's going to go down in the future. So I'm not saying that's going to appreciate at 50% a year for the next 50 years. No, I'm saying 20% the first 10 years, 15% in the 10 years after that. And then it just returns what the market returns. It just gets the same as the S&P 500 maybe. 10% a year for the next 30 years. Okay, that $4,000 actually grows to be $1.75 million worth of Bitcoin. That's crazy. And I realize that puts Bitcoin at a very high price in the future. We're talking about like $30 million Bitcoin. I know that sounds crazy, but we're talking about 50 years from now. Keep that in mind that, like, again, we're talking about a 20% return, 15% return, then 10% returns for 30 years after that. So it's this is going to put Bitcoin at a very high price, but we're looking 50 years into the future. Everything's going to become much more expensive. So when you add these up, it actually increases the buying power. So after the first 10 years, instead of having about $6,000 of purchasing power, inflation adjusted, it's $21,000. By the end, it's about $400,000. Inflation adjusted too. So at some point, I could actually probably sell some of this Bitcoin and buy some more rental properties if this goes well. I fully realize too, Bitcoin can go down. There could be volatility, right? I could have some kind of expense come up for the rental property and maybe Bitcoin's down 40%. Maybe I have to sell Bitcoin. But what's more likely is I do have cash in other places. I could withdraw and put it into there. But this makes me actually buy some Bitcoin that I wouldn't buy otherwise. Now, why am I buying a Bitcoin ETF? Why would I buy this? I know some people are going to give me a hard time. This isn't really buying Bitcoin. The fact is, the ETF does buy the underlying Bitcoin, right? I hold that Bitcoin and I think about it as more of an investment. This is not supposed to be a hedge, right? A lot of people like buying actual Bitcoin instead of buying ETFs because if the government seizes their assets or if they want to move, anything like that, they still have their Bitcoin. But my rental property is already tied to me. I already can't move the rental property. I'm not planning on moving this asset, this Bitcoin. I'll be happy to pay the 0.2% fee. It's a little bit easier too. Like if I sell it, I can withdraw it to my bank account within a couple hours, maybe a day, right? I think this is just fine. And this is what a lot of people will do in the future too. I want to do something that's similar to what a lot of other companies can do. And of course they can hold physical Bitcoin. I think a lot of companies will. But also for a lot of individuals, it's just a lot easier to go into the brokerage account, buy $4,000 of an ETF and call it a day, right? You also have some extra flexibility. When you buy an ETF like this, you can, in the future, or even now, I guess, depending on where you're at, you can take loans against it. So if something comes up, I don't actually have to sell the underlying Bitcoin. And I know there are ways of doing that now, but they're not as clean as just borrowing from Fidelity. So if this account goes up to $15,000, $20,000, I can easily do a withdrawal with lower lending rates than I could on some decentralized platform. It's a little bit less stressful too. It's Fidelity, right? They're a multi-trillion-dollar company. Eventually too, if I want to in the future, maybe I could get some extra cash by selling covered calls when we're a more mature asset, or if I'm trying to hedge towards the top of a cycle, right? Which I don't plan on doing too much, but it's nice to have the flexibility. So that is really what I'm doing. That's why I'm doing it. I think this is going to do really well over time. And I want to know if this is something you'd ever consider with one of your businesses, maybe even with your emergency fund at home. I think that is different because really emergency funds for individuals can be kind of emotional, especially if you don't have the full support of the family. I know some people that keep all their wealth in Bitcoin, besides maybe the house that they live in, the cars. that kind of stuff. Like they don't hold cash and then they just use Bitcoin for everything. I know people that do that, but if not everyone is on board in your family, that can be stressful, right? And if you don't fully commit, you can miss out. Like you kind of commit and then you have some kind of expense come up and then you didn't really take advantage of the pump, but now you have to sell some Bitcoin and then you get worried. It can cause a lot of stress compared to a business, which is all about the numbers. Like what is the smartest thing to do unemotionally, right? So let me know your thoughts on all that underneath the video. Let me know if this is ever something you do. Let me know if you think it's a good idea or a bad idea. There's also a link to MargeX and a link to CoinW underneath the video so you can start trading cryptocurrency, or maybe you just want to buy some Bitcoin, right? You can check out those links. I appreciate it. I will see you in the next video.